corrections and institutions. It is Thursday, January 30th. We're continuing our work with BPS. We're still in section 2, and we're going to be talking about art and state buildings. So Joe, it's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Catch you up here with the controls. Back to River, Art and State Buildings. This is administered by the Vermont Arts Council. They have a group that gets together to select locations. So I think they work with the commissioner in advance as to what projects are going to receive art. And then once those projects are selected, they have a committee that gets together to select not only the art, but where that art goes in the building. So that is a bunch of artists that are brought together and say, these are the areas where we'd like to see the art, provide us art for these locations. And then they sort of send in proposals, the committee meets and ends up selecting the art for that location. The request last year, prior years, it was at 50,000 last year. It got raised to 75,000 per year, and we have 150,000 was appropriated last year. And both projects have been selected.
Where are the projects? Do you know?
The booking area at Northwest State Correctional Facility, that expansion project, and also the Regens project for the juvenile facility.
It'll be a long ways off. Where was the last one that we did? Do you remember at all?
Would have been the wildlife.
It was
Oh, yeah, it was here, and then we did Department of Human Services, the one in Burlington.
The what?
There was one in Burlington that we saw on that field trip.
No, there
I'm
was
wondering
is
what
that.
the last one
Is that what you're talking about?
This here's in Essex at the mental health facility,
Mental health facility. That may have been one of the
It's
last.
fairly
ones.
recent.
Yeah.
part of the race. I don't believe at that point in time the art was on the wall when we were there last year.
So where is this picture?
This here was the gym, and half of that is the gym. The back half is the maintenance shop. But that is inside the yard of the mental health facility. On the main building on the inside, there's also pictures on the wall for part of that part.
So this is the this is the secure residential or the
Yes.
So is the booking office and what else?
Regens? The
Regens.
Juvenile
Do you
facility.
have the breakdown of which, the price for each one?
I think 75,000 went to each. So each one
Okay.
got 75,000. There's also, and we're in the works right now with prior year money also at the courthouse in Hartford. I believe that committee's meeting and reviewing the location of where the art is going to go.
So there is a committee, the Art and State Buildings Advisory Committee, I think it's called, and Troy is a member of that, with its committee.
Very taxing committee.
I know, you haven't met at all, right? You haven't met at all.
I've met by email probably 3-4 times. We've given approval to these projects. I just don't.
Yeah. It's an important, this item has been here for many, many years.
Yeah.
Sometimes the art project is integral to the structure of the building. Do that as well, when the building's being constructed or renovated, and sometimes it's a freestanding piece of art, but it's a program that we've worked pretty close for the arts. Council.
Yeah.
Well,
Just real quick, I'm assuming it's through the Vermont Arts Council, so these are all Vermont artists that we're supporting through these programs.
Mhm.
And it's also unique art. It's not supposed to be, a copy of this that they used elsewhere. It is supposed to be unique for that site.
and we own the art, the state owns it.
Yes, that is correct.
And what, James?
Well, that's my question is really not a weeds question is, do we have not a warehouse, but like some level of extra art somewhere, or is it just what's literally there? So
What is there?
Designs for that.
You know, it's rotating, because we talked about pictures rotating in here and stuff, if there was some.
David Sheets says that in here.
That
But
is,
it's
that's different.
Okay,
Separate.
but it's not really a big Okay.
Yes.
That's all I have.
This program is about building it into the construction project that
Okay.
we just started. And that it becomes a part of the structure
Okay.
or inside. Then there's the line item that talks about artwork and stuff for the state.
Okay, so thank you so much. It's all.
Troy,
No.
anything else? So let's go to the next.
It's a Bloomer building,
Ugh.
Rutland. Yeah, sewer system upgrades. I've found some interesting photos to show that it's,
Doing okay diving?
that's just about it.
Oh,
On the top left photo,
I mean,
I know.
that's a problem. We've been trying to work with the city to actually suck out that. It actually is quite deeper. So back before the buildings were constructed, there are actually two brooks running through this site. And then over time, they have built around it and then on top of it. This here's in a box sewer that's going through there. It's made up of laid up stone, and over the years, it's a combined sewer. So as it's running through there, you know, the rains outside increases and it's eroding some of the stone. We've had some issues with the vapors coming up through the slab, flooding into the basement. That's the upper right photo. You can see our basement has flooded. We actually, on the foreground of that picture, you can see sort of a concrete block wall. So we've actually dammed up, built a wall to create a dam so it doesn't infiltrate the entire basement. So what we're doing is we're going to have to remove a substantial section of the basement slab, rebuild the box sewer. And there are also different clay tile. Back in the day, you know, after a box cover, you got clay tile, you've had steel pipe, we had PVC pipes. So just over the years, there's a multitude of different pipes coming into this. And it's flowing through under our building and then goes into the city's sewer system. So we're basically going to be building and encapsulating a new box sewer. And so it just flows through and no longer comes up into the basement.
So we've been doing work in this building as in the past. And I was looking on the previous spreadsheet and I can't,
Yeah, there's nothing.
there was nothing. So it was the biennium before that we,
And before that also, yes, you're correct. When BGS took back operations and maintenance of that building, and I forget what year that was, 2017 maybe? It was after you
There was
left.
no,
Was
we
it
did
during-
this was one of the first lease purchase agreement buildings you ever had in the state of Vermont.
that was way back in the
We-
90s, wasn't it?
Yes, and it was under Commissioner Obahowski that we actually took back the building.
Okay. And so,
Condo.
and so we've been actually doing the maintenance now that's since that time frame, and it's just catching up. This is one thing after another. So along with this, the project also started and included the roof and skylight replacement. So right now we're focused, this here is focusing just on the sewer. Leftover funds would be going to the roof and skylight, but that's one of those things where, you know, the worst that we have to fix is this sewer first.
But Madam Chair, you are correct. You've been doing, someone else built this building. We took it, it was, it's a building that we bought over time at BGS, but there were certain repairs. You have put lots of money into the parking garage.
Uh-huh.
When Irene flooded, this is where my memory's coming in with that. There was issues with this. It's a lot worse. When Joe reviewed this with me, I said, we're back here again. And
Yeah.
he said, oh, yes. Dave Burley had engineered some quick fixes and I'm
That
just,
goes back.
that goes back, but it has deteriorated as Joe is showing. He's told me the condition is a lot worse than I remember.
And this sewer system that we have here, is that the part that's also contributing to the city, Rutland City, whenever there's a heavy storm and it's stormwater overflow? Is this part of what's contributing to some of that?
It's running, some of the water is running through this sewer system. Because I know what, we have traced all the pipes as best we can. We do know one's goes to a catch basin in the parking garage.
Well, sometimes even there's flooding there on the road.
Yes.
Is this connected to any of this, that flooding?
Because it's a combined storm sewer, there is some of that going on. So when it does rain, this level increases.
So is that 1.5 million gonna complete the project? What is that gonna get us?
It should take care of the sewer issue of rebuilding the box culvert and the slab.
And you're gonna do that all in FY 26?
Hopefully, yes. We have a construction manager who's now on board. We're completing the documents. And we'll be bidding that project out.
When do you think you'll go out to bid? That, in the,
Spring, this spring, late spring. Part of the problem is the only way to
25 or?
25. The only way to get into this area here is, and get the material that we need out and in, is cutting a hole through the slab. So anybody who's been down to the Asa Bloomer building, used to be a restaurant in there, and part of that is going to be cutting a hole through that slab so we can get equipment down in.
Yeah, sure.
Joe, if you could clarify, the total estimated project cost is 8.9 million. We have, we have identified in the out year 5 million, correct?
Right. There's-
So it is 8.9. We don't have all of that appropriated yet.
That is correct. There's also part of that whole prior funding and everything else is redoing a lot of the stuff, work in the building. So
In the
it's-
building,
It's the roof,
Right,
skylights, also
Right.
part of that.
that's part of the 8.9.
That is
That's
correct.
what I'm
There's a
remembering.
total project. That's why in the out years, there's additional funding.
So you're using whatever money from that whole piece, combining with the 1.5 for this sewer project. So have you completed the work in the other parts of the building, like the skylight and?
The roof and the skylight still to be done in the future, but we have done new boilers, new air handlers, replacing the ductwork, the fire alarm. So basically, when we inherited the building for maintaining it, everything was at end of life.
That's why we ended up with it, because the developer didn't want it. Give it to the state for a deal.
Right, right. Lease to own or whatever, at the end of 20 years, it's, you know,
So I'm just trying to follow the money, and I know we didn't put anything in there the last 2 years, but I am remembering that we put in money for the internal part of the building. And that's what the 8.9 represents. And to date, you've used 2.4 of that. So why is there a balance of 300,000 when it should be?
because it's the balance
Oh, yeah.
is left over that we have not have contracts for yet. So like I said, the construction manager is coming on board, will encumber that money along with the 1.5. The rest of it has been expended and or tied up in the design and the other things that we have to go through with getting this project for the sewer work to be completed.
So was the sewer work anticipated 2 years as part of this project?
Yes, we did not know the extent of it. We were still doing an investigation of this. It's been very difficult to get equipment inside that box sewer to thoroughly investigate it.
It says camera can't get through.
Yes, that, we've had troubles. It's been pumped out several times and we still cannot get to the very end, which is where it's exiting the building. So the city's been working with us to get that pumped out, but it's just very difficult for some reason.
So in the out years, is there that 5 million projected for FY 28, 9 for this particular project, the sewer?
No.
It's for other items within,
For the skylight, the skylight has seen better days. It spans, creates an atrium in the center of this facility. When the building was built, was constructed with steel bar joist with plywood on top. And so it's not like we can get a lift in there to access the skylight. So it's going to be a staging type situation that we have to create in order to protect the people walking in and around and accessing the skylight.
So the last bullet, the roof and skylight are beyond life cycle, need to be replaced. So the thinking is it would be out of that 5 million line item in FY 28-29. It's not part of the 1.5 or anything for this project.
And I believe, once that is all done, we have basically caught up on our end of life items. Although probably there is that. I think we're a good 8 years in, so.
Questions? So you anticipate going out to bid for the sewer project this spring,
Yes,
then being in construction by fall,
if not sooner, yes.
not sooner, and then completed in fiscal year 26.
As far as I know, looking, quick review of the drawings, and like I said, this is not long lead items. It's just a matter of, labor getting in there, so we suck up the slab out and things like that.
Questions? Okay.
Right in the backyard next door, connected, we have the Rutland Multimodal Garage renovation.
Oh, boy.
I just want to say, I love that parking garage. I park there all the time. I'm sorry.
Well, now you're gonna have a different perspective of
I'm
it.
sure.
You're gonna know a little bit more of it. Don't ever own a parking garage.
Not in Vermont.
That is correct.
If somebody has one to give you for free, don't take
Don't
it.
take.
Especially when it was
Case in
built
point.
with the front put in backwards
Yeah.
originally.
It was not done by BGS. We inherited it after the fact.
You noted I didn't say it was.
Actually, no.
And this parking garage is, for BGS anyways, is somewhat unique because it's also open to the public.
For Paramount, right? The Paramount.
And others, it's third-party operator who's operating that. State has parking spaces on the inside of that. And like other parking garages that we own, it's falling into disrepair due to, salt
So,
coming off the vehicles, getting down into the concrete, the steel rusting, the reinforcing bar rusting and popping off the concrete. So concrete and rebar need to act together. Once one of them fails, long run, they both fail. Which
so be careful where you park. So for the.
it's now safer if we look at the picture on the right. So this picture on the right, we just completed. It was down the last. Really proud of the year, first of the year. So I think in December, first of the year, this is temporary shoring that you're looking at. And it is holding up a beam and the other concrete planks that are running into it. And it's actually the ramp that takes you up to that upper level. So down below the level that we're standing at is where the transit center is, a little bit of parking and people can drive through. But that's what that shoring is until we get in there and actually repair that beam, then that shoring will go away.
So this is a Band-Aid?
That is correct. Or you call it art.
Yeah.
Joe?
What is the utilization of the parking garage? Is it heavily utilized?
I don't,
Well, use it.
Yeah.
at night definitely, but I have no idea if we have counts on that or not.
Used a lot at night.
So we have a partnership with the city of Rutland.
Yeah.
This parking garage, it's used for the staff during the day. My understanding, it is fully utilized, and then it's used in the evening by the community, I think, to go to some of the events that are down there, so. Multiple people are using it and we get more information on that, but it is. Critical infrastructure to the community, to Rutland City. I mean, we use it for state office buildings, but it has multiple uses within the community.
So do the other constituencies that utilize the parking garage contribute to its maintenance, or is there some income stream that from them?
I'd like to pull the MOU, the agreement that we have, I think and to see if it's still in existence with the city.
Yeah, I'd be curious, because St. Albans City has a parking garage, we don't get supplements from the state or have the state,
Well, we own this building.
Well, I get it, but we're not the only ones using it. Sounds like we're in the minority of the
Right.
users.
And there's some of and we'll just do a quick fact sheet history on it. So this garage was built because there was I understand some federal money that was brought in for busing. And it was a part. Multimodal, that's where it all was created
There was
from. So
transportation dollars.
that's
Because I
correct.
was on transportation committee when this came about.
And so there's also the bus, this is where the busing goes through and is, so there's all sorts of odd agreements with it, but we'll try to summarize that for you. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of equity.
Okay.
When did that initial 600,000 come into play? Because it wasn't last year either. And why the lag? Why weren't we talking about?
Probably appropriate to date. That's what's confusing. Is it the 600,000 that's in the FY?
We're asking for another, no. We didn't have 600 last.
And I'm not
last
seeing
biennium.
anything in cash either.
No,
I'm trying to track this.
it was before my time.
Before the previous.
Yeah.
You don't remember? Because that's what paid for this stuff, but why the lag? Like, we didn't talk about this at all last biennium. I'm just curious. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just really curious.
Manpower and a flood.
Yeah.
It's basically what it was.
You know what? Flood?
Manpower and the flood,
So do you think that was FY 21, 22?
yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
So
I'd have to go.
if I recall, it originally belonged to the city of Rutland. It was on CAX for 2 years. But what a boat anchor it was from the state.
That's right.
Kind enough to step in. I believe it's kind of.
So I have that spreadsheet at 522 and 23. And we have,
That's what I mean.
what we had was Ace of Bloomer major renovations. But unless it was put in there, we had 1 million. That doesn't track at all.
It doesn't, I would have to go, I will find that for you.
Right.
Just Pittsburgh, the Academy firing range upgrades.
We're hearing lots of moaning down.
We
there.
have rebuilt this thing so many times, and then we put a roof on, and then we put the sides on because of stray bullets. Remember that?
I remember Jim Richardson going down and talking to the neighbors and looking where the bullets were going, if they were going in their yard.
Yep.
That's not building
You're
on.
down there next year, maybe you
Yes.
can.
If you're in this building long enough, you're gonna be looking at stuff that you took care of years before.
Along those lines, I'm sure saying, and I picked some of these photos because you can still see daylight coming in.
Oh,
So
God.
we did put walls up and we put up baffles overhead that almost enclosed the entire range. However, because if they're still using lead bullets, that's an issue for air quality. And so they are. So the roof of this is going to span over the top of it to keep out basically the snow and a little bit of rain, because when they are using the range in the winter, it becomes a hazard when you're walking down that range. The way that they train, they just don't stand at the firing. They actually advance. And they're going from, I forget now if it's like 2 yards to 25. It's a 25-yard range. And so that's the issue is when they're walking down is they do get the snow in there and it builds up the ice. And it's very dangerous and nothing worse than, slipping on ice when you have a loaded weapon in your hand. So that's what this roof does. And they're also then looking to put a small addition on the side that will allow for longer range, more than just a handgun shooting down there. And I forget the length of that. that's what they're looking for to close. This $200,000 here is just to start that whole design process and possibly permitting.
So for the committee, if you notice, this is not for FY 26, for FY 27. So it's not the first year of the biennium. This is being proposed for the second year of the biennium. It would be starting design documents, possibly getting into permit. You don't have to do any permits for that.
Yes, for the roof, yes, we will. Yes.
So I'm gonna ask a stupid question. Why not get it started in FY 26? Why do it in FY 27?
Well, I mean, I'll let you, part of that is, you know, all of the projects, again, you look, we have to look at staffing, we look at capacity, and we look at the schedule of where it is. We know this needs to be done. We have to go out to bid, we have to find someone to do the design, to work on it. That just, if you look at the schedule of time that takes, we're moving probably into next year, at the end of the year, and then we come back for the remainder of the money.
So I asked that question purposely so that the committee can focus to know that not all of the money that's being requested is for FY 26. It's for FY 27, sometimes for startup. So then those are questions, even if we see money for something like this, say it was reversed, say the 200,000 was FY 26, and say there was nothing in 27. It's like, well, why are you doing this in 26 if there's no money in 27? Those are just the little questions or thought processes to go through so that we can see the flow of money over the 2 fiscal years.
And just to build on that, Madam Chair, Joe's team and his estimate, you can see us looking at it at a very preliminary stage. We're seeing a build out of 2.5. It could be more because we haven't totally explored it. Working with them on their programming and how they've changed to, because law enforcement has changed their training. I think when we built it, it was just shooting straight down, as Joe said, there's
dirt.
it's changed a lot. So, you know, that gives you an idea of what's coming. This is part of that long-term planning. We're gonna do planning, and this is a project we've got identified as a high priority to move forward in future years.
And what you could see, I'm not saying you will, what you could see on this next year with budget adjustment, because it's the mid of the 2-year budget, it's midterm to reevaluate. The administration may propose that 200,000 to be zeroed out because of a variety of reasons. Or you might see the 200,000 go up to $1 million because they did go out, they did do the design and got a better estimate and they want to jump because it's a priority. So you could see that 200,000 increase to $1 million in next year's budget adjustment. So right now, that 200,000 FY 27 is a guess estimate, basically.
I mean, there's some logic behind that,
Right.
that estimate, but.
Yes.
But it's not,
Joe's in line.
right, it's logic, but that can change next year based
Dartboard.
on a number of factors.
I don't think that's the case.
When I replace the see it next year.
Year.
I know. Oh, boy, that's what I was thinking.
This is dumb.
No, it's not dumb. Go ask.
Do the contractors who are going out to bids know what kind of money we're funding,
So
appropriating?
your capital bill
What?
is a public document. Depending on, so, you know, sometimes if we're doing a construction management, they know what the limit is. You know, direct bid, they may know what's appropriated. Sometimes how you phase it in, you've given us money to go out to bid and we have someone and so we're working with them knowing what the cost is gonna be. I mean, I'll let Joe, depends on which method we use, but it's a public document. They have an idea. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We do only because, it's not the exact dollar amount that we're giving them, but we are giving them an estimate of what the project is going to be or at our cost. So, because some contractors can't fit in the $2 million project right now. But if you're bidding in January, they could be looking at going in a start in August. I've got a window. So knowing that dollar amount helps them and how they can put their team together and their self-performance.
And it's really, I love connecting this, and this is my passion, but our Vermont businesses, that industry that does work for us is looking at January. Because they're looking at what projects am I done, how many staff do I carry, what am I gonna be bidding on? And we're not the only ones, they may be looking at transportation projects, they could be just looking at the general public. So they do a whole analysis that is around that. And they're determining what are they gonna carry through the winter, what do they wanna bid on, what are they gonna need for staffing? So it is important information to have and, but they also really depend on all of us, not just BGS, to get those projects out when we say we're gonna get them out. Because they're doing their business planning.
Sure.
On the backside of that.
I don't think I've ever had anybody nail our estimates. So they've been high and low.
They've been high and low. Usually high.
Usually don't last.
Only when they're higher.
Except for your $500,000 guy when you had $1.5 million,
Well,
he obviously didn't know, or he was.
That's right. He left something out and that was all part of that discussion with that individual as to why,
And just really, because you brought it up really quickly, working with this committee, and I was really impressed. Being able to create some retainer contracts that we do with a limit of up to $750 has helped this organization move some of those smaller projects
Yes.
along and to be a little bit more responsive. And so I was really impressed to see that, and we're working with industry to make sure they do bid and come into the retainer side so we can help keep them supported with these projects while we're doing bigger ones.
Okay.
Mutually beneficial.
Absolutely,
yes.
absolutely.
State House replacement of historic finishes.
Yes. This here is David Sheets, curators area. And you can see where last year there was no appropriation because some of those funds were reallocated. Part of our problem there is David working with our maintenance staff could not get the carpet contractor in here. We'll purchase a carpet and then also do the install. A lot of the carpets that are in this, I don't believe it's this room here, but when you go out to the card room, both chambers, I believe they are 6 foot wide broadloom rolls that are hand sewn together. So if you get down and actually in the house, I think there are certain areas where it is worn that you can actually see where that is sewn together.
They've been there since the late 80s.
Yes, and that contractor has passed, who was very good. And we've been trying to find another contractor. We had one all set to come in and he didn't show for whatever reason. This is our maintenance group because they're small little patches. Certainly when you're going from the card room to Cedar Creek, there were several patches in there. That installer is not just patching the carpet and then walking away. They actually, when you walk into the Cedar Creek, unless you really look, you're not going to notice it because it was also shaved. So it's worn around there and they actually shaved the top of that carpet so it actually blended in. So there wasn't a 1/16 of an inch difference as you're walking through.
Details.
That's a historic.
Very much, yes.
Historic building.
I think it still is the #1 site, or one of the #1 sites visited in Vermont.
And it may not be the right place, but I can't help but notice that the floor chandelier is in the bottom right-hand picture. Here.
Yes.
And that chandelier is missing a globe, and maybe it's already been addressed.
Where's the
we
missing?
will
Let's go check on David.
Been missing for a while.
Gina wouldn't be able to see it, and Will wouldn't be able to see it, but for those of us, and you wouldn't be able
I
to.
won't be able to see it on
You
the
wouldn't,
other
but for
side.
Alice, but for those of us sitting on the other side, it makes me crazy and I want to bring a ladder in from home. Imagine. But it's a beautiful piece and it's, I mean, if you look and it's over toward the side, if it were, like where Carolyn Brannigan sits, if you look straight over, that's about where it's missing.
Okay.
So, and so I'm gonna go look and then I'll
Thank you
make
so
sure. Because it very possibly could be ordered, but because this is a replica and this is unique to our state house. You know, we aren't able to go to the local hardware store and buy it, but maybe we should have something on it until the new one comes in.
I get that. It's tangentially to that. Governor Snelling's portrait only lists his first time in office and not the second. And I spoke to David at orientation. He told me he was gonna correct that. And he claims he's on it. I spoke to him last week.
Okay.
He's gonna long.
So I told him I'd buy a new nameplate. It's just a name tag. I can get one. The Vermont Trophy engraved. You don't have to put it in
They
the.
pay personality.
They'll arrest me if they see me changing the plate.
Jesus. He's a freshman. He's a freshman. He
All I
can pay
can-
attention.
You get used to all the crooked pictures and stuff, trust me, you just start walking by them and not notice. But
Yeah, but you should follow David through the building because he will straighten them.
Oh, he
Yes, he
does.
Yes, he will.
But I told David about Governor Snelling's thing, that a visitor should not be more ignorant of his tenure as governor as a result of reading what it says.
Yeah, he got elected again in 90 and he died in
then he
91
died in
or
92.
92.
That's correct. He died in 91, in 1 year.
Yeah, well, it was the fall of the year he was inaugurated.
Correct.
Remember that one well?
Yes.
So to finish up on that chandelier, you don't have to bring your ladder. No, it's quite all right.
Like I gotta,
You don't need your ladder because it's actually on a winch. That actually lowers down to the floor. So there's a cable up in the chandelier. You don't need a ladder.
where's that operated
You
from?
gotta have,
That's what you have to know.
you gotta have it
Landed during a,
because
We don't need to know, then we'll be, suspects.
you gotta have
Joe's
that
not telling you.
chandelier to a certain height because of the TV cameras. right?
Exactly. So it has been raised and lowered multiple times.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
Yes.
Never look at that
If you ever tour the dome, you will see where the control switch is.
By the way,
That's right.
is it to clean out
Oh,
all
yeah.
the rubber bands that?
I'm not sure.
It's fascinating, actually.
It's the original construction, so you think it's probably they did it so they could put the kerosene in or light, the candle. I mean, it's wonderful. It's one of my favorite spots to visit in this building.
so I have a question back to our points here. Is, so 50,000 next year, you said that this year there's money that's
Mhm.
reappropriated?
last year's biennium was reappropriated.
Are we, for this, the amount of money that's being appropriated, is it enough to keep up with it? It is. It's
I
enough.
think he had 150,000, so
Okay.
that's why we pulled
Yes.
it last year. We basically pulled it and we basically, hate to say it, because it
Yeah.
wasn't a wash, but we needed new chairs
Right,
and tables in the cafeteria, so we
But
were
in-
looking for
but
100,000.
until we can find the person, for example, that can do the quality of the intricacy of the carpets, that's kind of.
I think we're on our third individual contractor right now to get in, so hopefully this summer.
So if something were to,
Snap-
someone were
snap lock
to
before.
appear. This is where that flexibility that the chairs that you know of. And all of a sudden, if I didn't have money here and we had someone at that point in time to do the carpet, then we would look at. Maybe we realign some funds.
Yeah.
To get you through and we would report on that.
I think there's 100,000 for this already, or 150, I don't remember what.
Last biennium, I think it was 100,000.
100,000, yeah, and that's why, and then there was another 50,000 hadn't gone out the door, so we.
When the Globe comes in, we pay the invoice, it'll be down $300.
But for the new members, having this fund is so critical to this building, because
Yeah.
prior to that, the only way you were doing anything was through the Friends of the State House would do fundraisers. And try to restore this, and you've really made a beautiful investment in our State House with these dollars.
We've done a lot.
Yeah.
And also we've redone a lot of the committee rooms.
Yeah.
And we did that about, I don't want to say it's been 10 years ago. It was more around 2017, 18 to try to get more space in these committee rooms. Reconfigured some things with bookcases, different things, just to get a few inches here and there. And a lot of that came out of this committee. So the new chairs in the cafeteria came out of this committee. For that, because chairs we had there were from the late 80s when we did the expansion back then, and they were falling apart.
We should probably appropriate enough to get another 50 chairs in there.
That's, I was gonna say, a second,
It's so much empty space
At
in
least
those chairs.
25 or
Oh
something
my
like
God,
that.
it's
they definitely.
ridiculous. Half the tables are empty. Anyway, not to get off topic, sorry. Went down that avenue.
I know. I'm thinking the same thing, Scott. Go for it.
Well, Madam Chair, for the record, Scott Moore, Joint Fiscal. I have checked with the Sergeant of Arms. She said not all of the furniture has been delivered, so it's entirely possible some chairs are on the way still. Just to give you that.
Keep good day.
It's a good update.
Yeah, anything else? Okay, let's keep going.
Last but not least, out of section 2, this is with the State House and it's repointing on the exterior, all of the granite. So
8.9 million.
So what we brought in a leader of a corporation who makes the lime putty mortar. This individual, great credentials, he travels all over the world consulting.
Lime putter,
Okay.
that's.
Line or line?
Lime,
Lime.
The
Lime.
lime.
like lemons and limes. And
Yeah.
And so it was very interesting walking around with this individual and learning what we have done and not done properly over the years and
Hmm.
some of the issues that it is causing over time. And it's not just the mortar itself. Some of it is the roof and the gutters. So on the photos that you see here, you can see some rusting, some rust stains on it, and also some darker granite. Granite should all be the same color.
Yeah.
The rust and the darker areas are moisture. It is not good. Some of the moisture content in some of the granite where it was very dark was in the 90%
Wow.
moisture content, very high. And you would think that it would dry out over time, but it does not. And so some of that moisture depends on where it is on the building. It is coming in, it's reacting with the granite from the outside, the elements, and also from moisture on the inside. When you look at the pillars on the picture on the upper right, you see I think it's like 5-8 feet in reality, that darker gray.
Yep.
That is because there is no separation anymore between the pillars and the granite base. So this individual was telling us how you actually go about, without removing the pillars, getting new mortar in that joint.
So before there was separation between those,
Yes. And there wasn't a lot of separations.
just enough for air to flow.
No air. The mortar was there.
Oh, okay.
And so now
It's crumbled.
the mortar itself also acts as a wick to remove the moisture.
Some dumb questions. So the mortar was there. Let's just say an inch. Is it more than an inch?
Oh, no. We're talking maybe a 1/16 of an inch or less.
Oh, very low.
Very little.
Okay.
The joints that you, at different parts of the building, so if you typically on the front section, where it is a smoother granite,
Mhm.
those joints are a 1/16 or less. It's very difficult to even tool some of these joints because you're having to use basically spring steel to get in there very fine to rake that out, the loose mortar, and put it new. What we've also found out is our jointing. In the bottom left photo, you can see where, I can't remember if this is on the front side that we're looking at in the photo on the right, or it's on the east entrance, but 2 years ago, we actually redid the east entrance and repointed that, and it's fallen off, along with the southeast side of the front of the State House. Reason is that tooling is the wrong joint for this type of masonry. So what we learned is that the quality and the craftsmanship that's put into this, you have less mortar because those stones are taken into fitting very tight. So it's basically there to slide that stone around when you're setting it, then be working out some of that moisture. So it shouldn't be tooled. So what this is to put a plan together to go through and repoint everything around the State House. But the first round is to, when we repoint, is also so that mortar is not tooled, so it actually helps extract the water out of the granite. Then it's the weakest part of the assembly between the mortar and the granite, so it will fail over time and it'll have to be repointed again. But what we're looking at is it will not be tooled. There'll not be, I don't think you can really see it in this photo, but on the bottom left photo on the far ends, you can see there's a little rounded type part of the mortar. If you go outside and look, you'll see it. And that is a tool joint that we will not have. It'll be struck.
So it will look like a natural almost because of how they fill it, Joe. We're not gonna, you clean it. This is like the cleanup on.
Right, it's only, and we won't have it. It'll be struck flush and that's how it will stay until we can get the rust stain. We have to actually treat the rust stain to wick out the rust that's there. And then also get the moisture out of the building.
So it's a long process.
Yes, it is.
So to retool, are you gonna take out what's currently there, that old
Yes. So
mortar?
when you're repointing, when you're pointing the masonry, you're going in, you're removing
The old-
anything that is loose. Sort of like a dentist with a cavity. You're only taking out the bad stuff. Anything that's hard and solid stays, and that's okay. And then you're putting that back.
So with the moisture, is that's coming from inside the building
Yes.
and going out?
It's also, yes, it's inside, it's around the windows, and it's also the outside. So it's a mixture of stuff as the HVAC project.
Right.
Dehumidifying during the summer, so that moisture's there. And it's wicking out through the granite.
Well, that was gonna be my question. With the new HVAC, we should be helping at least some of that moisture. Put inside. So James and Joe?
Oh,
You
I
have
was, just-
something?
but
Or
I
are you
was just gonna
stretching?
say that we're going to do that in the summer now then, right?
Well, if they have the money, this isn't
I
gonna
mean,
do
what's the
the work.
plan? It's to eventually
This here,
climate control the building all year round, not partially.
that is correct.
Yeah.
In the winter, we don't have to worry about drying it out. It's good and dry right now.
Correct.
But in the summertime, when the humidity comes up, people are coming in, that fresh air is coming in, that's bringing that humid air. Now we're going to be treating that.
Yeah.
And taking the moisture out. So it'll be more of a constant moisture during the summertime. And that'll help with that moisture that's going through the plaster and out to the granite.
The new
And this
HVAC.
is just an example, like, and for anybody who doesn't know this, I guess, it's a great example where things you do to save money or seem sensible can come back to really haunt you in the future. We didn't necessarily know that back then, but we learned this now that it really didn't end up saving tons of money because we're gonna spend lots of money to fix the problems that were caused by not having streets.
And it's somewhat of, like if you're talking about insulation on old buildings, it's more of a science. When we redid Waterbury and we put insulation on the outer walls because there's three rows of brick. The issue being is if you stopped that heat migrating out, your exterior brick could actually freeze and fall off. So that was somebody behind the scene doing a lot of math, different temperatures this is what the thickness is. So some of that heat still migrates out to the edge so you don't freeze, but still helps insulate the building also.
Joe and then Troy?
What was the current contractor's opinion about mortar types that have been utilized in previous repointings?
Not so much the mortar type we have always gone over the line, putting mortar. There has been some maintenance over the years, have used caulking and a quick fix, and or somebody also using the wrong mortar, but by and large, it's sort of the long putty mortar.
Okay, that's in the bottom left-hand corner, that's cocking in the bottom.
Yes,
That's what it, okay.
and part of that was, again, limiting that moisture. Temporary fix.
Troy?
Can you just help me remember, because I don't remember doing this, and this is a petty amount right now, but when I was looking at last year's budget, we created this reallocation for state house, dome, drum, Ceres, design, permitting, construction, restoration, renovation. It's only like 38,500. But can you help me remember, like, how does that play against that money? It's only 38,000. Do you remember this?
I don't remember that dollar amount. But if it's for the drum or series, that is the painted portion of below the gold, the dome and the roof.
It was gold leaf from the dome. We redid the dome and we did the statue.
Yes, we did. Oh, your statute.
I don't remember because there's more general construction language in there too. And I was
That's in the
I
react.
think that was finishing
Yeah,
up
reallocation.
everything that had to do with that project of
No,
that wooden series.
this
to go-
kind of,
No, that was just for that project and that was it.
it's got a little discrepancy.
Sometimes we did.
So what is the 219 gonna be used for?
How much of the plan?
Up with
The design is relatively easy on the fact that we know the mortar we're going to use. It's how and where to tackle it first and how to go about that. And how, you know, how far can you get in the summer to do this? Because it's really late spring, mid to late spring to be doing it, and again, early to late fall.
You can't,
Because you've got to keep the joint moist to a certain extent. With lime putty, you do not want to over wet it like you may do with some other mortars. So it's really critical. And when the wind blows and the southern faces get hit by the sun, it'll dry faster. But it's a chemical reaction that has to take place. It's about carbon dioxide working with the lime putty mortar to make it harder.
so, okay.
So I don't know that it was coming out of the cash fund. And I didn't ask, but when it's an odd number like $219,723, I think it was a rounding as to everything else that was put in there, and it was
Meet the 50,000
put right here.
meet the line.
And so we'll be taking that and starting that process. Fire alarm testing.
So what's,
Yeah.
what's,
Your handler went down because when the fire alarm goes off, your air goes down.
so the fire alarm is gonna go off?
It may or may not, they might have silenced the alarm. They do have that
They're
ability.
just testing it in the room.
You're testing it,
Yeah, I was gonna say, you don't realize how loud.
You
it
don't
is.
realize the
Yeah,
noise
so
until all of a sudden it's down. Is that this or it's everything?
It's everything. You don't want to be bringing in more air into the room or anywhere.
Yeah,
It's
oxygen fuels.
I mean, you could just hear it just kind of. It's like you're.
Do you have someone who
Do this, the masonry work?
There are masons that we have throughout Vermont who work on historic properties.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really just developing that plan to put forth on how we're going to tackle and which ones to tackle first.
So I really hate to ask this question because I don't want to open up a can of worms.
Mm.
How is this gonna tie in if and when we do a state house expansion?
I already opened up that can of worms when Joe was bringing me his projects forward and he'll tell you it's.
It's a big if.
It's not that big of a deal because we have so much to do. And the money that we're going to need with the staging and everything else, the front
It's
of all of it gets done first, then we can go down to the sides. And so it won't impact. It may be that in their rear portion, if there's going to be addition going on, that project actually picks up part of that while they're there, because they're going to be in there working. And why, pull down your staging, pull another contractor in. But that's the future what I've been looking at.
But right now, we're keeping them standalone projects. We have not done any blending because, Joe in reviewing the project said whenever, however, whatever is decided about the addition, we have to do this work. And so he's set a path to get it moving forward and not being blended into that project.
Oh, well,
What would that expansion be for?
more space for us and for the rooms.
Committee, okay, I was just curious.
Well, other things too, life safety.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got to deal with the cafeteria,
Mhm.
which nobody wants to take on that expense. But you got a project cost here of almost $9 million. So put that in perspective in terms of an expansion. Expansion is not cheap. Where at least I would say if you did any expansion at this point, you're bumping 25 million.
Yes. That's what was talked about last time under that plan, but that plan is only in the design development phase, whether or not you go forward with that. There's still, that one's wide open. It could be less. Once.
So I think it's
decision's
really
made.
important that on the expansion plan, we've been working very closely with representatives from the State House to understand with because the architect is working for BGS in partnership with you and making sure programs and services are aligned. So there are different options with different price tags.
Yes,
But
that
it's,
was the worst. No,
So I don't want to say it's exactly 20, I'm just correct. Joe doesn't mean to say it's exactly
right, it
$25
could be
million.
20, it could be 35.
It could be 16 and it could be 35.
because it's, earlier in the month, we were talking about, the design processes and those steps in design development. You're just bringing those blocks together to look at it, and you still have to put a price tag on it. And that's when you're looking at it going, do I need this other block over here because the price is too high, or you want to add because, you still have room in your budget.
I know where there's a couple temporary trailers.
Those are being used.
They're in use right now.
Middlesex, they're being used.
I've been there.
4 beds, they're being used right now.
Give them back to you for $1.
Yeah, we were here, Wanda, we were here when we did it. They were temporary, we almost,
10 times.
we almost had that 2 million clawed back. FEMA. So we weren't doing anything.
I
They
still
became
remember the
permanent,
deal
they
for
were
$1,
afraid they were gonna
so.
be permanent.
So
That
It's a
was
big-
always a fun visit. You'd go in there and the floors were so spongy, you'd almost be bouncing.
when we went there, watch a mouse. But it wasn't just the belt, so
What did you do?
What's good?
the mouse.
Oh, the mouse.
We come back.
I don't know.
Yeah, probably with a few others.
I don't know where.
How come we lost the screen?
Because he's done.
No, he's not.
Yeah.
Section 2.
No, there's a lot.
There's a lot more. There's 120, there's
That was
archives.
Section 2, that you got.
We're not done.
Joe's like, I think you're full of it.
Yeah, the next item right there.
Really?
Still got it.
Yeah, State Street, HVAC, steam lines.
Homework.
Why are you looking at me? I just feel I
Doing
like
this
it.
last night.
Hey, suddenly the rest of it's fine.
Early lunch.
I wasn't looking in the book,
Wow.
I'm sure you had everything. That's how high my truck is.
Aye.
I think Joe has slide too
Is
back.
it in the
office.
presentation?
Probably.
That's.
Let me call it, hold on.
Well, I know it wasn't in
Yeah,
this.
it's in the presentation. Yeah,
I know what it is, the print shop.
HVAC, steam lines next.
Yeah, it's the next page.
Joe, do you
And
want
then
my paper?
Middlesex,
No.
everything else.
Let me,
We can,
It's not on his slideshow, but it is in.
It is, it's on the slide.
No, I know, but not on his on his
Oh, I see.
computer. That's, and I love that he thought he was done.
You could call it up on
On our
our,
website.
on our documents. Or on our agenda. Or-
Yeah, that's a pretty big $32 million ask for those 3 projects, no, is there?
holy mackerel.
Jill, would you like this?
you can help with the numbers or whatever.
You're gonna be winging it
We'll
now.
wing it. I'll wing it. Yeah, let's see how it goes, all right? How's that? So 120 State Street, HVAC steam lines. We discussed that project earlier in the month when we were here.
That's ongoing.
And we're looking for $2 million in FY 27. Would have to defer to that about the appropriations in place.
Here, I have to start, excuse me,
I
sorry.
have it right here.
There you go.
I'm hoping on this.
So maybe paper is still good.
It's a lot of money.
I don't need this.
Everyone,
So our total project cost for this is upwards of 34 million. We have done some planning in there that 34 included potentially moving individuals out of the building. So we are looking to try and renovate 2 floors at a time. That gives us about roughly how much we get done in potentially a 8-month to a 1-year timeframe. And so that we're cycling with the 2 floors because some of the stuff, the utilities and everything else are working from 1 floor to the other. So that's why we're looking to do 2 floors at a time.
4 million. Well,
And appropriated to date is $3,025,000. We still have that money in the bank. We are right now putting our RFP together to go out for design. And with that, in that design process, we will also be working with the tenants to find out exactly how we're going to move the individuals around. Department of Motor Vehicles is in this building. It's heavily client facing. So that's going to be one of the issues, is how to move them around inside an operational building and still getting the public who needs to get in access. We've did it at 133 and 109 years ago, so I got faith we can do it. It's just working with a tenant as to who goes where when we're doing that. And what we're looking to do is, over the years, we have spent funds on this to upgrade all the restrooms and the plumbing for the restrooms. Some of the vertical electrical has also been completed. However, from the transformer that's outside to the switchgear on the inside, all has to be replaced. So that's all part of that. That would be part of the first phase. Whatever the phases are going to work out to would be included in that phase to get that new switchgear. What was be mentioned this afternoon's presentation about flood, the electrical system is in the basement, and we do have to take that into account. During the flood in 23, we only had roughly 3 inches of water in there. And prior to that, in 22, we spent funds to somewhat dry proof that building floodwater wise. It's just about a failure of some pumps and then also of a fitting on one of the waste lines. And so that's why some of that water was circulating throughout the building. So correcting those, confident that electrical equipment can still be in where it is. Maybe just move it off the floor instead of right now, I think it's probably 6 inches off the floor, taking it a foot or more, however it can fit in the basement space. And the next largest piece of equipment that's going to be in there is the chillers for the HVAC system. Right. Don't necessarily want to put them in the basement. If we did, we would end up having displaced people. Our operations and maintenance down there, DMV also has their whole warehouse of all their paper products and everything else, license plates that are coming and going through there. So that too could be an issue. So it may be that we put all this equipment up on the roof, one that, gets it out of the basement, gets it high and dry in case of a potential flood. What we'll be looking at also is needing a penthouse of some sort to block that, because the people not wanting to be looking at the HVAC. Also includes replacing of the lighting systems, because I think we redid the electrical back in the 85, 86 in that era. And so it's all at end of life. It's all wire mold. It's above the ceiling, and we're putting in new ductwork. All that's coming down. So at the same time, we'll be converting to LEDs and a whole new ceiling. Fire alarm system is also included in this, along with a complete sprinkler system.
34 million, huh?
Yeah, so it's
Worst case. And that was our estimate of having to move people out and lease space to go to.
So it's definitely not a refurbishment. It's these things and the cost of putting somebody else, but it's not like every room's being.
Every room's going to be touched because of the HVAC system, and if you.
Right, but it's not, like you're not renovating the whole building, making it all.
But every floor is going to be.
Every floor,
Because the
yes, because of the lines. If you got the paper copy at the bottom left photo, you see the radiators on the outside walls.
Yeah.
Those are all going away. They may or may not get units similar to this, where each individual room is controlled heating and cooling, and there's a fan behind it, or if it's all just going to be overhead. One of the problems is with this building here, mentioned earlier, when you're looking at insulating, this building was never insulated from day one. Insulated, it may become an issue. So that's one of those things we have to evaluate. So if you don't insulate the outside walls and you only provide heat from overhead, if you're not careful on the layout, and sometimes people change the office layout on us. If you're up against the back wall, so you sit over here against that pillar, it's cooler than sitting on this wall.
Yeah.
It's one of those things of comfort, and that's where putting a unit like this in the room. And people range 10 degrees, I would say, of what their comfort level is. So that provides some comfort adjustment of just to each individual room. But each room will be touched. It may even have to be recarpeted. I haven't walked through it yet to be looking at the carpet. I know, talking to the previous commissioner over there, some of her areas needed to be recarpeted.
It's a pretty good one.
The windows were also replaced years ago, so the windows are not going to be touched. They were done in probably 2015,
10 years ago.
something like that.
Seems like
So
we
they've got a
work
lot
on.
of life left. in them.
We have, yes, and we have been slowly doing this. We did have it in 2010, 2011, something like that.
Forever.
We were looking to do an addition on the back and do this overhaul. People got moved around different locations. We also built a heat plant that somewhat impeded the expansion on the backside of this. The Department of Education was in there also, and they were needing some of that space. They're now at life. So I think earlier was mentioned that, the whole planning thing of where people go and reuse some of that stuff, that's what happened. And so we did never put an addition.
So the money to date is 3 million. So we have put in what you're calculating in that 3 million. In FY 23, we put in 525,000 bonded dollars. In FY 24 and FY 25, we put in 2.5 million cash. And that's where you're getting your money, the 3 million. That's what I'm coming up with. So none of that has been encumbered or used to date over
Correct. We
2.5
used,
fiscal years.
yes, early on when we started into this project, we used planning funds to decide who was going to be in the building. Can we move people out? And people are staying right now. Everybody's staying where they are. On the 5th floor is Human Resources. Agency of Digital Services has some space on the 4th floor. So this is going to be starting that whole design process. But the planning looked at also, what do we put in there for a heating system? Life cycle cost actually said geothermal is the way to go. The problem with geothermal is we don't have enough land to do the wells because out back is full of utilities. Out front, we have a little bit of lawn space, and then we have the city street. However, we also have a heat plant. So when you're doing geothermal, you want to balance your heating and cooling loads. So over 20 plus years from now, if you're going with just geothermal with only using it for cooling, you're going to lose your efficiency because you're going to start heating up the ground and you're not going to be able to dissipate that heat. So what's going to go in there? Probably will be using heat with some heat pumps because of what my mechanical engineer, Tay Southworth, is doing here at the State House. That's a high probability that we could do a water-to-water heat exchanger over there, just like here. And so as that warmer water is coming back, we're extrapolating that heat and using it for dehumidification. And we'll also have.
Well, the 3 million is going to be used.
It'll start us with design. And again, part of that design was also whether or not we had to design and fit up temporary another location and start that construction. So we're bringing in, because of long lead items, because of potentially fitting up one or more areas, we're also, even if we stay inside the building, it's a temporary fit up. They're bringing a construction manager in so we can get an early jump on it. So that'll be putting their contract into place, and we believe that we'll be expending some of that $3 million at the end of 26. And then be looking at FY 27 to continue that cost. And then it's going to be in the out years also. But the first phase is going to be electrical and mechanical heavy. Because we need the new equipment in place to start working off so you can actually finish a floor and using it.
They talk a minute.
Thank you.
So,
Street.
yeah, we've got
Update our codes.
about
Replace.
10 to 5 more minutes, so I'm just wondering, if this would be just a good place to stop. Reschedule, then you can have your documents on the screen.
Oh, would that be nice?
And,
Middle Science is the same as central services, is it the same as central services?
Yes,
That's what I've got in mind.
yes, it is. No? Different roof.
Yeah, oh, so this is a different.
and
project.
Yes, it is.
DOT scheduled it all.
$50,000.
We don't have.
It's part of my law.
a schedule, so-
I just, I want to get my notes in order so I can really, when the time comes.
We have any-
It's part of my.
I just want a globe for the bulb in the face of air.
I have a question on this. When you look at the rotunda,
I don't think
all,
this week, we don't have any time.
all have this
Thinking next week, but do we have
Next
any?
week,
ceramic,
AC,
ceramic sort of.
ACCD
Except on the two
and
corners.
BGS.
Oh, yeah, totally.
The, on the Bennington Monument.
Attention. Stop looking around.
Oh, there's get long on the
All right, that's a David Sheets question. You know, I've seen it and I don't know. It could be some special reason or they.
When we asked this question, I was like, no, I've got a question.
Continue.
Why don't we try doing this? Why don't we try to continue with this next Tuesday afternoon if you're available? We don't know. You may be next, you may be.
That's scheduled through the office, but I'm more than willing to show up whenever I'm told.
Are we still on?
We're still on, yeah.
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out when we can finish. Because we're booked up all day tomorrow.
Next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, I might be in the Senate, but that's working with Shayna.
No, we have something scheduled at 1 and potentially at 2 to talk about the Bennington Monument and the building community grants. But from 3 on, I do not have anything yet.
I don't know if the commissioner does, but that, you know, again, send your emails like you typically do it off to Shayna. She'll schedule accordingly.
Then you're coming back this afternoon, Joe, just to go over
Fine.
the damage that was done at the flood.
Yes. I'm gonna check all those slides.
And I think the commissioner's gonna get us the MOU on the Rutland parking garage.
Yes, she was gonna look at that, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you folks, tomorrow, we've got the courts coming in for their request. Does BGS need to be sitting in the room for that?
It's because those two projects are appropriated to BGS, even though it's a judiciary section. We're aware of that.
At 1 o'clock tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, so someone will be here for that. Okay, well, let's see if we can finish section 2. There's no other sections that you're directly, well, you are, was DOC.
Yes, we're in several other sections.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's finish up section 2. We can do that Tuesday afternoon if BGS is available. That, can I have it back? Anything else before we break for lunch and then we're back here